Just
Tinde mangbo yore, temen de juri kune yewas, ta yewa di logdo siya chedre. Gyoba kharala na, tila de juri malawi na, kashegi de nyi di shenlenge tsama re ten thokba sa yorwa. Di nizan ta di shenlenge tsama ma da asde, kola goba yorda.
so when it's this terminological division, I mean the Tibetan word, you know that it's not that, not necessarily that thing, but it's something similar to it. So this is, I mean, in Tibetan, like that's word people know, they understand. Like when you're familiar with this text, you see that word terminological, you know that it's not the actual thing, but it's something similar to it.
Chisa mi kashi thokba sa karwa, shenlenge tsama re sha asde ta, le, ta de juri kune yewa yinzan ta di shenlenge tsama ma re se ne, koyo thokba se ruda.
So understanding when you see that terminologically divided, you'll know, okay, these are not actually this prime cognizer divided, ascertained by another, but something similar. Just a sec.
Then another question? This question finish?
Yeah, so if you read in the book, it says when prime cognizers that are introduced by themselves are divided, and then when it says when other cognizers induced, when prime cognizers ascertained is induced by another, are terminologically divided. So you can tell. So, and
Then
nothing else? No other question?
okay.
Yeah, online people?
Yeah.
How do you correlate these prime cognizers to emotions?
So how do you correlate these prime cognizers to emotions? So the sema di tang emotion ni di jawa kariyer or
다 emotion la de khani yorwa.
Hmm.
먼저 록시기 emotion 지 먼저 컨트롤사 emotion 지 리기도 저도 다 록시다 그래. 참아 그런 말을 하다. 되게 저 만자 나대들이고 미신다 아베 도자도 산에 강해된데도 emotion 심마지 와시고 좀 볼래요. 초화식 좀 보실래요.
Right.
딜라다 참아 임바다 배제 만차다 emotion 만차 참아 마임베난 누구래다 참아 갖고래다 참아 옛날 emotion 레 갖고래.
When we have like strong emotions such as anger, it's difficult to say that they're prime cognizers, or valid cognizers is another way to refer to prime cognizers. So it's difficult to say that they're valid because often, we'd more likely say they're wrong or mistaken or like wrong because, when you have these strong reactions to something people does that makes you very angry, it's difficult to say. I mean, maybe some, but it's difficult to say mostly they're not really valid or they're kind of not really clear.
The emotion la the basic shawarmashi emotion caption bo showra charanzo tanda aranzo western kajana la the shukchum bo show pheju chigdo.
But emotion covers like a very broad range of things, right?
That pheju manja choa la shigdo choa thago choa.
So we'd say mostly it's like a feeling.
Yeah, charanzo example chig shada penang dendejil emotion tanda nge law mayimbe shinda emotion chig example ji shada arwa.
So maybe if you give us an example of something like another emotion, some example of that.
I can give you, for example, the emotion of, or I could say the feeling of gratefulness and the emotions that come along. For example, crying of happiness,
right?
Or just feeling warm in your heart.
Yeah.
So this is an emotion that stimulates the body in joy and pleasure, natural feeling we could call it. How do you actually correlate to that?
So like the example of an emotion of like a positive feeling, like maybe like I'll stick with gratitude. So this feeling grateful. So an emotion like that, or there's crying with happiness, these emotions that make you feel good. But we'll start with gratitude, and so how do you relate that to a prime or a valid cognizer? So the like
emotion.
Yeah, the emotion, indicating emotion like gratitude, love kare. Or tujiche the yabudu the emotion, then this yabudu or some the ninji the jampa tha ninji yong na or the the jetsu yirang jaware the yapai yabudu the tujiche sampa the gratitude love kare. The the Samadhan Ravaya, the Kandha.
Samadhan Ravaya Sura, Shilling Samadhan Dava, Raling Samadhan Dava. Sura,
Chitangi.
The Dilla Chani, Dilla Chani, Bena Suzu Gawa, Suzu Nezu Yawu, and the Chungdu, Suzu Nezu Yawu, the Chung, Shivetone, and Gawa Gomi to Zo, that Samacharo.
Right.
I am machine by in a Suzu Ijiche, and
Right, so you could, there's many varieties of minds that can induce this feeling, right? So if you maybe feel joyful for a situation, having clearly understood the situation, understood the value of it clearly, then you feel joyful, that's induced by a valid cognition. But maybe you just have this kind of belief, just a belief that this is something good without really knowing, like maybe just you see something, you think, oh, that's cool, but you don't really know about it, right? So then you couldn't say that that's a valid cognizer. It's more like a belief, which is something different. Yeah, belief or trust, kind of like a trust or a belief, that's a little bit different to clearly understanding and knowing, right? Right, so if it's a valid cognizer, it has to know its object, right? So you have to check that has it actually known the situation and understood based on that. So, if you've been with, if you have a partner or a friend you know for a long time and you really have checked, we have a very positive relationship and that makes you feel joyful, then you'd say that would be a valid cognizer. So you know from this, based on having this positive relationship, that stimulates this feeling of happiness in your mind, right? So you can know this, and it's like that is a valid cognition. It's a valid understanding.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Okay, so what about the knower validating a feeling to a certain point that you know that this feeling is valid, but as you advance in your growth, this validation uplifts or changes and goes into different worlds or different realms. For example, you thought this was happiness, but no, now I discovered something else with my mental mind.
Okay.
So the knowing changes. Is it the knower that changes?
Okay, so sometimes through time your understanding changes. So you may have this valid cognition thinking, oh, this is happiness at a current time, but then later in life you might realize that that's not really happiness and something else is happiness, or you change your perception to think something else brings you happiness. What was the last one? Is that not valid, or is
that the knower that changed, or is that the knowing that changed?
Oh, is it the knower that changes, or is it the knowing that changes? So sometimes nanso di namnyang di devare no di none devare. Pugu chung chung di devare. In jela, this jela then di deva mara shemba devare, di samba jegire. So kare jegire, di semba jegire, or di mi jegire, or kandi jegire, di kapsula.
Well, marge devare samyage de deva marwa. Ani chisu devare sam yiji said yiji de yuwadorada. Right. 신이당 아니 시야기 유니가 줘도 거라.
So essentially, it's this what we believe is happiness is not like a genuine happiness, right? And that is why a perception of what happiness is can change. Like we might previously have thought one thing was make us happy. Now we're not into that anymore. We're into something else, and that makes us happy. So what's changed? Well, it's both the knower and the knowing that's changed, right? So it's you could say the person has changed, and also the knowing itself has changed. The mind that knows has also changed.
예, 단당 알아서 창문로 단다. 디지 있어야지. 단당 알아 지라서 디지리 시내야지. 태어나 템보요마 요로 거라. 디가르스나 뭐 라신 코나 디지 뭐 멤버 땡고 뭐 코나디 동해그란 시임바디 라트고 딜다.
So from a Buddhist perspective, experience something. We might think, oh, this is really happiness, right? But then over time, that kind of changes. That experience of that situation changes, or similar situation changes. And the reason for this is because we say that the nature of this thing or this experience is not happiness. Its nature is suffering, and that's why it changes, into its suffering. So this is what's called the suffering of change, in the three sufferings. Yeah, so it's good. You're thinking. It's a very kind of well thought out question. Yeah, it's good. Good thinking. This is a mistaken perception. We see things that are actually suffering as happiness. This is part of the problem we have.
Yeah. Right. So,
this is the whole basis for the Buddhist understanding, is that this perception what we think of as happiness is actually suffering. So when you understand that, then you go, what is genuine happiness? What is real happiness? And that's what leads your mind to liberation, thinking that because liberation is the genuine happiness. So if you attain the state of liberation or nirvana, then at that point, the happiness comes and goes, but at that point, the happiness doesn't change.
Talk about
So and then you have this wish, like, that's it, that I got to attain liberation, that'd be awesome. So that kind of leads you to then you realize actually it takes a bit of work to do that, so got some work to do.
Another question. Do you have question? Another question? This question.
I could go on with question.
Yeah.
Come on.
Yeah, come on. That's good.
So, whenever you feel you reach a state of everlasting happiness, what is your task? Is your task to devote to that happiness, or is your task rather to surrender to it? Is your task to seek even more, or continue your maybe I can reframe is like human beings, they seek.
Okay.
They have the tendency to seek.
And
from the moment there's no seeking,
then what do you do?
Then is seeking a habit? Is it a bad habit to seek?
Okay. So if you attain this state of like stable, lasting happiness, then at that point, what do? Do you devote to the happiness more? Is there something more to seek? Do you have to seek more happiness? Because human beings have this tendency to want to seek. So is that a habit? Is it something we need to get rid of? Or
there's this understanding that seeking makes your heart blind, or there's this understanding that seeking makes your heart wide.
So it's seen as a good thing and a bad thing? Or, yeah.
Yes, what is it?
Okay.
Is it both, you need the black and the white?
All right.
Transcendent?
Okay. So does it make your heart blind or does it make your heart white? Is it good or bad? Is it beneficial or not? So nanza di kesi kirang di taba thobna dini dewa yore dini lega kare kandire di kapsula ra kare jegire kain dine mi nanza lega gogire nanza di gomshi yore di lega gogire ni gomshi di pentok po mare kain dine nanza mikashi samla ta di lega yona di mikpa yona ra mikpa yona dini di jegogire di pentok po di yabudu mikashi se di mikpa shukchimbo yona di pentok mara di sem sapo mendura yapo tabji di sherab mebu sogire so di mikpa di shukchembo gogire pentok do kari handa
ale dire 제가 먼저 디시고로 산제 좀는데 그런 타버 톱 사위네 그런 단다 디지털 투어요 말해서 라좀 벌어와 코어방네 타버 톱 사나 좀는데 라좀 벌어 믹스의 송주제 요래 최지 송요래 갈성으로서 나처럼 코올레 타베 타버 톱 요래 이나 저랑라 디지털 단도 타둑들아요 말해서 다 타둑들 가려서는 저랑 산제고래 콜메데 산제사니다 디지털 조래다 딜레나 디지로사요 말해 이나 딜라다 미과 가려서는 산제데 조심제라 펜도치야 치디니다 다 그게 내가 지야데 좋아요 말다 미과도 좋아야다 보링 치야제요 말다 왜 가도이나 비지 차제 심지 된체 되어라 심지 담제 상 맞아서고 배 비지래다 나들라고 비지 차요
So I gave special teaching to what we refer to as arhats who have attained this nirvana, this individual liberation. And he gave this teaching saying this liberation you've attained is not the final liberation. Okay, it's individual liberation from samsara, this cycle of suffering. But it's not the final happiness, because the final happiness only happens when you attain full enlightenment. Now, when you attain the state of full enlightenment, even though that's the final happiness for yourself, you then have your aim or your aim or purpose becomes the benefit of all other sentient beings. So it's like your work's not finished, right? In fact, you're going to be real busy for a real long time, right? So it's like compared to what little we get done, the Buddhas are quite active.
맞아 되고 월 다딜라 상담단들이 미 신달라 편도치야기 돈다이나 비지 채나야고요래.
Yeah.
수수직부 돈다 짱짱 이나 비지 뇽나야 그러다 돈다들.
Right. So it depends on why you're busy or why you're seeking, right? If you're busy or seeking the benefit of others, then that's wonderful. That's great. More is better. But if you're seeking your individual happiness and not really
only
your individual happiness without concern for others, then that type of busy, that type of seeking is detrimental. You need less of that. Yeah, and that results in a lot of suffering.
ngazo tanda mimangbo ji dongyeoya de dire nga chikbu tanda nga bidi chigi nga chikbu tanda mishinda jeerwa ta di kangeyong.
That's when the suffering comes about, when you think, oh, I'm really busy working for my own welfare and not concerned about others, then that's when the